The city lights flickered through the black car window as Robert De Niro stared out in silence. It was nearly 7 p.m., and the air outside the studio was thick with the buzz of a prime-time broadcast. His driver didn't speak. No one had for the last 10 minutes. The tension was heavy, almost unnatural. Inside the studio lobby, producers greeted him with tight smiles. Too tight. One assistant tried to hand him a cue card with prepared answers. That was the first red flag. De Niro had done countless interviews in his life, but this felt different. The questions were already printed, and they didn't match the tone of a casual cultural dialogue as the invitation claimed. There were questions about celebrity overreach, respecting judicial integrity, and one about his 2006 film foundation being a political front. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. His publicist, Jamie, followed behind, scanning. The room, something's wrong, she whispered. Where's the senior producer? Where's Rick? Rick had been their main contact, but he wasn't answering calls and no one mentioned his name. They were taken to a dressing room. De Niro sat, looked at his own face in the mirror, and took a breath. The makeup artist avoided eye contact. She dusted powder on his cheeks and moved quickly. Behind her, the TV in the corner showed a news ticker. Live tonight, De Niro breaks his silence. He hadn't agreed to that title. That was red flag number 2. Just then, there was a knock on the dressing room door. A man, in his 60s, stepped in tall, silver hair, tan trench coat. His voice was low, but urgent. Mr. De Niro, you don't know me. I used to work with CBS. Name's Malcolm Raines. I covered Washington for 30 years, he said, handing over a sealed envelope. Don't go on that stage unprepared. There. Not bringing you in to talk culture. They're going to corner you, bury you, and they have help. Jamie stepped forward. Excuse me, how did you even get past security? I've worked every broadcast floor from New York to D.C. I still know a few doors, Malcolm said without smiling. Check the envelope when you're alone. It has names, phone taps, and a document signed by a federal judge connected to a directive your people never mentioned. De Niro took the envelope and nodded once. Why are you giving me this? 'Cause you're the only one who can take this public and survive it. You're not just an actor anymore. You're a symbol. But they want that symbol neutralized. Security entered to escort Malcolm out, but he left quietly, leaving a strange silence behind him. Jamie locked the door and opened the envelope. Inside were 3 pages. The first, a list of questions far more aggressive than the ones they were shown. One asked, did your nonprofit channel money from foreign media groups into judicial lobbying? The second page was worse, an internal studio memo, signed by someone on the Federal Legal Advisory Board, showing that Justice Amy Coney Barrett had pre-approved her live participation, not as a guest, but as a countervoice. She's coming on the show, Jamie whispered, eyes wide. De Niro didn't blink. Then, we're not backing out. You should cancel, she said. We walk, we're safe. We walk, and the story never sees daylight, he said, standing. They want to corner me. Good, I'll give them something they didn't expect. He pulled out his own folder, hidden in his bag. Inside were emails, confidential notes, recordings he had sat on for almost a year. Pieces of a puzzle he hadn't dared connect until now. They tied back to a judicial influence project. Something called Directive 77. Something buried deep in the legal system. Something that, if true, connected court officials to psychological data harvesting and private media manipulation. The studio countdown began in the hallway. We're live in 5 minutes. Outside the room, lights flashed. Cameramen rolled into place. Studio anchors were seated, smiling, unaware of what was coming. The show's host adjusted her earpiece, speaking softly into the camera. Robert De Niro joins us tonight in a special conversation about culture, responsibility, and truth. Stay with us. De Niro stood at the edge of the curtain, his heartbeat steady like a drum. The envelope from Malcolm Raines was in his jacket. Jamie stood beside him, holding his backup drive with all the evidence. The stage manager gave the cue. We're on in 3, 2, he walked out. The audience applauded. The lights hit his face. The camera turned red. Robert De Niro smiled, not because he was calm, but because he was ready to ruin the plan they thought they had prepared. He sat down, adjusted his microphone, and leaned into the desk. "Thanks for having me," he said. "I've got a few things I think your viewers deserve to hear." The air inside the studio felt thin, like the oxygen had been sucked out. De Niro sat across from the host, Rachel Lang, a sharp, well-composed anchor known for controlling even the most unpredictable interviews. But she didn't look entirely comfortable tonight. Her fingers tapped nervously under the table, a habit De Niro picked up on immediately. Something was off, even for her. The opening questions were simple, too simple. "So, Robert," she began with a practiced smile, "you've had a long career. But this documentary you're involved in, it's very different. Why now?" De Niro leaned forward slightly. "Because silence is easy. Truth isn't. And the truth we're ignoring is already shaping the future." Without permission, the audience clapped lightly. The teleprompter fed Rachel the next line, but she hesitated. Before she could speak, the camera angle shifted. Another voice came in. Calm, cold. "Permission is a strong word, Mr. De Niro." The screen behind Rachel lit up, and there she was. Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Live feed, her face emotionless, eyes steady. A federal seal in the corner. This was no cameo. This was orchestrated. Rachel looked visibly tense now. Justice Barrett joins us live tonight as part of our extended conversation on public influence and legal responsibility. No one had announced this before, not in press releases, not in promos, not even in the studio's internal call sheet. It was ambush television, legal theater, and De Niro had walked straight into it, but he didn't flinch. Barrett spoke again. "Mr. De Niro, in recent weeks, your documentary has stirred questions about the intersection of media and mental health. But your nonprofit has been linked to international lobbying groups and unauthorized data collection projects. Are you prepared to explain that tonight?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Rachel tried to intervene. "Let's keep this in the context of—" "No, let's not," De Niro said calmly. "Let's finally go off script." He turned slightly to face the screen. "You want to talk about data? Let's talk about Directive 77. Barrett didn't respond immediately, but her silence was telling. De Niro continued. "Your court has refused to hear 3 separate cases tied to the same digital surveillance system. A system hidden under academic grants funneled through shell institutions, one of which had a financial tie to my foundation back in 2013. We didn't know it at the time, but we found out, and we cut him off publicly, loudly." He placed a printed document on the table. This memo, authenticated by 2 federal whistleblowers, proves the system continued, and that your chambers received a classified briefing on its psychological trial phase. The same week, your team signed off on a legal opinion involving youth behavior analysis. Barrett narrowed her eyes. "That document is not verified in any court." "But it is verified by your silence," De Niro said sharply. "You knew about this? You knew what it was doing to students, to test subjects, to vulnerable kids." Rachel tried to cut to commercial. The control room was panicking, but the satellite feed glitched for a second, then locked in again. Someone behind the scenes was helping De Niro now, someone with access. Barrett leaned forward on her end. "You're confusing activism with accountability. You're exploiting broken systems to elevate yourself." De Niro didn't move. "No, I'm using my voice. Because I have one. Unlike the interns who were blacklisted after exposing this data project. Unlike the families who were threatened with gag orders." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small drive, placed it gently on the table in front of him. "This contains deposition footage, emails, a confession from someone inside. It's a very think tank connected to your advisory board. If you want to talk about influence, let's start with how many private meetings you've held with media consultants in the last 18 months. Barrett didn't respond. The screen froze for a second, and then her feed was cut. The audience gasped. Rachel was frozen in place. And then a voice from the control room, slightly distorted, came through the studio audio. Air the remaining segment. Cut the feed now. But the camera stayed live. The red lights still blinked. De Niro leaned into the mic. They want to shut this down. You all saw that? You saw how fast she ran when the questions got real? You've seen the way these interviews are staged. But tonight, we got ahead of them. You looked directly into the lens. This footage disappears. The documents are already duplicated. If I disappear, my legal team will go public with the rest. But if you're watching this now, remember, power doesn't fear exposure, it fears momentum. And this is just the beginning. The lights dimmed, the screen faded to black. But the country had already seen enough to start asking questions. And some would never stop. The network executives tried to downplay it as a technical disruption, but no one was buying it. Within hours, hashtags exploded across every platform. Hashtag De Niro exposed the court. Hashtag Barrett blackout. And the more ominous hashtag Directive 77, the clip of Justice Barrett's live feed cutting out mid-confrontation, had already gone viral. But it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a fuse. News outlets scrambled. Some tried to label it a staged stunt. Others pushed stories discrediting De Niro's foundation. But every attempt to spin it only raised more suspicion. Why would a Supreme Court justice appear on a live entertainment show with a preloaded accusation, then vanish the moment proof was presented? By the next morning, De Niro's drive had been duplicated and encrypted versions sent to trusted journalists and lawyers in 5 countries. His legal team released an official statement. This is not about politics. This is about institutional secrecy, digital surveillance, and the abuse of authority under the guise of national security. Mr. De Niro's team will fully cooperate with legal channels but will not be silenced. At the same time, independent outlets began digging into Directive 77. What surfaced was chilling. A formerly sealed 2011 report from a behavioral analytics group, ALLEGEDLY, working under a federal tech research grant, described early tests of a predictive risk assessment grid on minors across 3 school districts. The system used real-time biometric feedback and social media metadata to assign stability scores to students as young as 11. No parent was ever informed. The project was quietly shut down after 2 students attempted suicide. Their guardians never knew they had been flagged as emotional volatility risks. Worse, one of the project's advisory consultants had previously served as a legal liaison for a nonprofit. De Niro's team had briefly partnered with, a decade ago, the very connection Justice Barrett had referenced. Only now that nonprofit was revealed to have been a front for deeper government data mining and its advisory board. One of Barrett's former law clerks was listed as a silent stakeholder. It wasn't a smear campaign, it was a cover-up. Inside De Niro's Manhattan apartment, things weren't calm either. His security had doubled. He received 3 anonymous threats within 12 hours. 2 former colleagues warned him that certain political donors were extremely displeased. But he wasn't backing down. You okay? His lawyer, Vivian Sharif, asked, scanning through the latest documents. I've had movies shut down, had producers pull contracts. This is different, he said. This is personal now. Vivian nodded. Because they turned something real into a weapon. And they thought you'd stay quiet to protect your image. He looked out the window. They don't understand. I've already buried my image. This is about the people they crushed to build. Their system. She slid a USB across the table. It's the next piece. internal emails between Barrett's former clerk and a tech exec in Zurich. It proves cross-border data transfers, some into private hands. Zurich, he muttered. That's where the offshore server was routed. Exactly. If we leak this now, we escalate to an international jurisdiction. That's when the real panic starts. He hesitated for just a moment, then took the drive and handed it to his assistant. Get this to Al Jazeera's investigative unit in Doha. Quietly. Meanwhile, Justice Barrett was under unusual media silence. No press briefings. No public appearances. But an anonymous source from within the judiciary leaked a shocking detail. Barrett had not informed the full court about her live appearance. Nor had she disclosed a conflict of interest involving the former clerk, now tied to the data project. Even within the court, fractures had formed. Behind closed doors, discussions began about a possible ethics review. And then came the unexpected twist. A foreign diplomat, Minister Carla Rojas from Chile, released a statement claiming her office had formally warned the U.S. State Department about the same surveillance network 2 years prior. When her teenage niece became a target of unconsented psychological profiling during an exchange program in California. Your institutions ignored us, she said in a televised address, but now your own actor has exposed what your judges denied. It was global now. From New Delhi to Berlin, newspapers led with a single headline, "The Actor versus the Court." That night, De Niro sat with a small documentary crew, not for a movie, but for a record. "I'm not doing interviews," he told them. "I'm doing history. If this turns out to be my last appearance, I want people to remember why." He looked into the lens. They didn't just silence the truth. They monetized it. Weaponized it. They hurt kids. And they thought no one powerful would ever speak out because we all have too much to lose. A long pause. "I lost my privacy. Maybe I'll lose my career, but I'll never lose my soul." The camera stopped recording. But by then, a storm was already rolling in and the world was watching. The morning after Robert De Niro's documentary message was recorded. A silent war began. Not with bombs, but with servers. Encrypted data packages started appearing on secure dark web forums used by international investigative journalists. Hidden in those files were redacted contracts, internal emails, and server logs tracing a years-long data pipeline between 3 U.S. departments, a Swiss biotech firm and 2 global foundations, one of which once had De Niro's name attached. To it, the most shocking part? The biometric risk profiling data had been sold, not just analyzed. Sold to private insurers, sold to education boards. Sold to foreign intelligence groups disguised as health research NGOs. Back in New York, De Niro's team gathered in a closed-door apartment briefing. His lawyer, Vivian, his assistant, Eli, and former intelligence consultant Hannah Marsh sat with grim faces. "This is not just a scandal," Hannah said. "It's a digital trafficking network hiding behind legal research partnerships." Vivian opened her laptop. "We have connections between Barrett's former law clerk and a funding route that leads to Zurich, London, and Get. This AN agency flagged in a NATO cybersecurity report last year." De Niro leaned back in his chair, and Barrett. Hannah looked uncomfortable. "She's gone dark. But sources say she's been moved to an undisclosed location, possibly under federal protection or internal investigation. Nobody knows who's protecting who." Vivian's phone buzzed. She read the screen. Al Jazeera published the first leak. Across the world, millions read the headline. "American court tied to youth profiling scandal. Global investigation. Opens in Washington." There was panic. Behind closed doors, Senate intelligence officers met with cybersecurity advisors. At the Pentagon, someone gave the green light to monitor De Niro's communications. But it was already too late. Within 24 hours, independent investigators in Brazil, Germany, and India joined forces to form a joint media task force. Each brought their own cases of unexplained academic expulsions, denied insurance claims, and children targeted by algorithms. The deeper they went, the more connections appeared. One lead investigator from Munich said on a live stream, "This isn't just predictive data abuse. This is systemic profiling enabled by legal loopholes and justified by judicial silence." Meanwhile, a news leak surfaced. Justice Amy Coney Barrett had been scheduled to attend a private tech summit in Prague the week after the De Niro interview. The summit's topic: ethical data law in post-crisis democracies. She canceled her appearance within an hour of the blackout broadcast. Public trust crumbled fast. The American Bar Association demanded a statement from the court. Protests began outside federal buildings in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Students held up signs reading, "I am not your data," and truth was flagged dangerous. But the most explosive moment was yet to come. Eli, De Niro's assistant, received a call from a blocked number. It was a voice she didn't recognize. Soft, with a South Asian accent. "I don't have long. I was part of the Zurich meetings. I handled logistics. What you don't know is this Directive 77 wasn't just American. It was tested on children of diplomats in international schools. We were told it was a game, a stress tracker, but it was a lie." Eli hit record. The voice continued. Barrett knew. "I saw the memo with her initials, not just her clerk, her." Click. The call ended. The number vanished. The voice left no name. But that 45-second message was the last puzzle piece. Vivian brought it to a trusted national journalist, Javier Torres, who aired it on a CNN primetime segment titled "Truth in Exile: The Actor Who Exposed a System." The story led with that call. Then a second voice came in, this time a former government IT advisor who anonymously confirmed that Barrett's name appeared in a 2016 internal ethics memo flagging the legality of biometric trials. That memo had been buried until now. Back at De Niro's home, he sat quietly, for once not speaking, just watching. He finally whispered, "This isn't just about me. This is about everyone who didn't have a microphone." Vivian looked at him. "Are you ready for what's next?" He stood up. "I didn't come this far to stop when it gets loud." In Washington, the court met in emergency session. Chief Justice Roberts reportedly warned that the line between judicial independence and complicity has blurred. Pressure mounted. The world didn't sleep that night. Hashtags lit up across social media. Hashtag De Niro vs. Barrett. Hashtag justice on trial. Hashtag data crimes. Protesters gathered not only in America, but in Berlin, Rio, Mumbai, and Nairobi. The story had outgrown its origin. What started as one actor's explosive live moment had turned into a global movement. But while the public raged, something darker stirred behind closed doors. Inside a classified meeting room in Langley, Virginia, a small group of senior intelligence officials studied a map marked with red pins, all linked to the biometric scandal. One pin, brighter than the others, marked Zurich. Another hovered over The Hague. An analyst leaned forward. "We're no longer talking about exposure. We're talking about liability, judicial, governmental, and international." A man in a gray suit, older, emotionless, answered plainly. "Then it's containment time." Back in New York, Robert De Niro's team gathered in a high-rise apartment under tight security. The mood was different now. Not fear, but readiness. Eli poured coffee. Vivian read messages from international reporters. Hannah, the former Intel consultant, had just returned from a meeting with whistleblower contacts in Europe. "Interpol is interested," Hannah said. "They want to initiate a preliminary inquiry. But it depends on whether we release the Zurich files publicly." Vivian looked up. "The Zurich files are explosive. They confirm foreign minors were tested. That would put Barrett in violation of multiple international human rights laws." De Niro remained calm. "Then let's not leak them." Everyone turned to him. "You want to hold back?" Eli asked. "No," De Niro said. "I want to read them, live, on air. With proof. With names. Not just whispers." They silenced this. For too long. Let's make sure when it comes out, it never goes back in. Vivian nodded slowly. "A live broadcast. But not just domestic. We simulcast it internationally." Hannah leaned in. "But you need to understand something, Robert. Once you speak, there's no safe return. Barrett might be discredited, but she still has powerful friends. And the deeper you go, the more you threaten." He didn't blink. "Good, let them. Feel what truth feels like." 2 days later, a major international media alliance, CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, and NHK agreed to broadcast the live segment. It would air simultaneously in over 60 countries. The title? The De Niro Files, a live reading. A studio was prepared under full security. Digital encryption teams were flown in. Whistleblower testimonies were recorded in case the feed was cut. Every contingency was planned. But in Washington, panic reached its peak. In a back-channel message, a Supreme Court liaison warned Vivian directly, "You still have time to stand down. Barrett's resignation is under review. But if this becomes global, consequences will fall on your client." Vivian didn't respond. That same night, an attempt was made to breach De Niro's secure server. The digital forensics traced it back to a private contractor in Virginia, one known to have passed ties to government surveillance contracts. It failed, but the message was clear. Someone wanted the files gone. And then, hours before the live broadcast, a letter arrived, hand-delivered. Sealed, no return address. Inside it was a typed page, no name, just one line. "The truth has a price, and some of us are still in the shadows. Don't forget us." Attached was a photograph. It showed a child, maybe 12 years old, wearing a headset connected. 2 biometric wires. The caption at the bottom read, "Test site for Amon Jordan." 2019, De Niro held the photo in his hand for a long time. He didn't speak, he didn't cry, but something in his eyes changed. Vivian placed a hand on his shoulder. "This isn't just about them anymore. It's about what we allow." He nodded. "Then it's time. It's at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." The world tuned in. Robert De Niro walked onto the stage. No applause, no introduction. Just a man holding a file. He looked into the camera. "When I first spoke, it was because I was accused. Now I speak because I've seen what they've tried to hide." He opened the file. His voice steady. He began reading. Paragraph after paragraph. Names, locations, emails, transcripts, funding routes, all connected, all implicating. He paused only once when reading the name of a 16-year-old girl who had taken her life after being flagged by a predictive behavior model developed by one of the biotech companies Barrett had legally shielded. The broadcast lasted 47 minutes. Not a single network cut away. When he finished, he looked up again. "To those who still think silence protects power, you're wrong, because truth doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits for people like us to give it a voice." He walked off. And the world exploded. Within an hour, the International Criminal Court released a statement. "We are officially reviewing evidence from today's broadcast for potential investigation into biometric crimes." Protests grew, but so did something else. Hope. In classrooms, universities, newsrooms, people began asking harder questions. For Justice Barrett, however, the story wasn't over. Because deep inside an encrypted archive, her name appeared on one last document, a closed-door memo dated 3 years earlier. Its title, "Emergency Judicial Contingency Plan in Case of Whistleblower Fallout," was marked top. Secret and signed only by initials ACB. And somewhere, far away from the cameras, a different war began. One to find out how many others had known all along. But Robert De Niro had already started a fire. It was burning through every lie they'd buried. Let me know if you'd like to move to part 6, or if you'd like a cinematic thumbnail description for this part. The fallout came fast. Within 12 hours of Robert De Niro's live reading, world governments were scrambling. European human rights commissions demanded emergency hearings. A whistleblower hotline in Geneva received over 3,000 calls overnight. And in Washington, the Supreme Court was silent officially. But unofficially, chaos was everywhere. Inside a high-security chamber in the Capitol basement, an emergency meeting was underway. 5 senior justices sat in private, not robes, no media, just crisis. Justice Clarence Roper broke the silence. He didn't just accuse a sitting justice of aiding biometric crimes. He proved it. Another judge, older eyes red, whispered. And what if she wasn't acting alone? Nobody spoke. Amy Coney Barrett hadn't appeared in public since the broadcast. Her official press office claimed she was on medical leave. But that lie didn't last long. CNN's investigative unit revealed she had flown to Zurich the morning after the broadcast using a diplomatic passport. Alone, no aides, no security detail. And she hadn't returned. De Niro's team knew this meant something. Vivian stared at the flight data. She's running. Or she's cleaning up loose ends. Eli added, or she's planning a counterstrike. De Niro didn't say much. He looked tired. Not because of fear, but from the weight of what came next. Because this was no longer about exposing secrets. Now it was about surviving them. That night, Hannah received an encrypted message from a former MI6 contact in Geneva. It was only 5 words. She met with Caden Voss. Vivian went pale. He's not just biotech. He's black budget, Eli added, and arms trafficking. Data warfare. Surveillance AI. If she's with him, it means she's activating private resources. De Niro said only one word. We go to Zurich. They moved fast. In 24 hours, they were on a secure flight to Switzerland under the protection of Thomas Porage, under the protection of Kia, an independent investigative alliance tied to the UN. Their mission was simple. Find Barrett. Confirm her ties to Voss. Lock the final piece in place before the story could be buried. But Zurich was colder than expected in temperature and in tone. At their hotel, local authorities warned them, we can't guarantee protection outside. Geneva, there are too many private contracts in motion. That night, Vivian noticed they were being followed. 2 men in tailored suits. Not local, not press, trained. Hannah confirmed it. Private intelligence. Voss has a unit based here. Raven unit, ex-military, untraceable. Still, De Niro refused to back down. The next morning, they received a leak, a location, an old tech conference center repurposed as a research facility, 20 minutes outside Zurich. And Barrett's name was on the guest registry, under an alias. They drove out under cloud cover. No cameras, no phones. The building looked abandoned from the outside. 5e covered, windows cracked. But inside it buzzed with encrypted servers and hushed voices. Security was tight. But De Niro had a key weapon: press immunity. International networks had now aligned with his story. If anything happened to him, the backlash would be explosive. They entered through a side hallway with the help of a whistleblower, a nervous young woman named Laura, who used to work in data compliance. She led them down a corridor. Barrett was here this morning, meeting Voss in a sealed room. I don't know what they discussed, but they pulled the biometric backups. Vivian asked, the backups from Amman, test site 4. Laura nodded, and more. Files you haven't seen yet. She handed them a hard drive. This is my copy. I'm done with this. I can't sleep at night. De Niro looked her in the eye. You just did something no court could. They got out quickly, but not cleanly. By the time they reached the car, the men in suits were waiting. No guns, no shouting, just a clear warning. One man leaned into the window. The lights in the studio were dimmed, But every satellite feed across the globe was locked in. It was midnight in New York, morning in London, afternoon in Singapore, across 6 continents. Millions were watching. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It wasn't a celebrity moment. It was an international reckoning. Robert De Niro sat alone in the studio chair. No interviewer, no scripted questions. Just one table, a single microphone, and a pile of printed documents. The screen behind him flashed, "Live Global Emergency Broadcast." He adjusted his collar, looked directly into the lens, and began. "I didn't come here to protect myself. I came here to protect the truth." He held up the biometric authorization file with Amy Coney Barrett's signature. "This is not fiction. It's not political spin. It's a government-backed project that marked children, some as young as 6, as future threats." Labeled? By facial expressions? By how nervous they looked? By how quiet they were? He paused, and then those kids were denied help. Some were locked up. Some were sent to camps for behavioral control. You want proof? You're looking at it. De Niro pulled up screen after screen, footage from schools, transcripts from camps, classified memos with names, dates, and approvals. All tied to Barrett. All linked to a private global network led by Caden Voss. The documents showed biometric IDs tested in Syria, Ethiopia, Guatemala, and even domestic juvenile centers in the U.S., in secret partnerships with defense contractors and international health firms for years. "I asked myself how something like this could exist under the radar," De Niro said. "And now I know. Because it wasn't just hidden, it was protected." He leaned forward. "The woman who silenced whistleblowers, who blocked court motions, who fast-tracked predictive punishment laws from behind the bench, her name is Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And she did it in full knowledge of its consequences." At that moment, millions held their breath. Across phones and TVs, the broadcast remained stable for a minute. Then came the flickers. Screens glitched. Feeds froze. Viewers across Asia and parts of Europe lost signal. In some countries, the internet dropped completely. A digital blackout was moving in waves. De Niro saw the red warning light blink in the studio, signal interruption. He didn't panic. Instead, he spoke louder. "You think if the signal dies, the truth dies with it? You're wrong. This drive," he held it up, "has already been duplicated and sent to 47 legal entities across the world. It's in the hands of courts, journalists, and human rights coalitions." He stared into the lens, cut the feed, "Silence me. The truth has already escaped." In a secure control room in Geneva, Hannah, Vivian, and Eli watched the blackout spread. Their satellite uplink, a backup built for emergencies, kicked in. They pushed De Niro's feed to dark web networks, press servers, even pirated live sports links. Within minutes, the story reappeared in unexpected places, restreamed through encrypted social platforms, radio repeaters, and citizen-run YouTube channels. The world fought back in real time, and suddenly, the feed returned. The main network reconnected. De Niro's voice came back, this time with captions translated into 19 languages. The story was out. And the world was listening across the globe. Protests erupted. Students in Madrid marched through the night holding signs that read, "I am not a threat." In Jakarta, mothers lit candles outside the American consulate. In Nairobi, data scientists hacked the biometric firm's website, replacing its homepage with footage of the camps. By sunrise in Washington, D.C., the Justice Department had announced a federal inquiry into Barrett's private dealings. The Senate demanded an emergency hearing. The Supreme Court issued a statement saying, "We do not shield misconduct." But Barrett didn't respond. She was still missing until a photo leaked. A grainy image from a Zurich cafe. Barrett, in plain clothes, sitting across from Caden Voss, a laptop between them. Her eyes were red. His were empty. The caption read, "Power meets consequence." Within hours, Interpol issued a notice. Back in New York, De Niro stepped outside the studio, greeted by a silent crowd. Thousands holding phones, cameras, candles. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just looked up. It was done. Not finished, but begun. That night. Vivian asked him if he felt fear. No, he said softly. Fear is what kept everyone quiet for years. What I feel now is weight. And what do we do? With that, De Niro looked at her. We carry it till the next truth needs a voice. Eli handed him a folder. Another whistleblower reached out. Different agency, same pattern. You want to see it? De Niro took the file, paused, then nodded. The story wasn't over. Because in a world where secrets are coded in silence, truth is rebellion. And this rebellion had only just begun.